The meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication onto the Council's website. Item 1 is apologies for absence. I believe we have apologies from Lynn Worrell and no others. Is that right? Good. Item 2, I move the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 7th of January 2025 to be approved as a correct record. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on, item 3, I have not agreed to any urgent items of business. And item 4, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declaration of interest they wish to make this evening? No? Thank you. Item 5, statements of the leader. And I just want to say one thing, really. There has rightly been an awful lot of interest in the government's white paper on devolution and local government reorganisation and what it will mean for us here in Thurrock. And I think it's inevitable that there's going to be some nervousness about the changes that are coming. And I know that our residents, our staff here at the council have lots of questions about what it will mean for them. But I really do want to be very clear that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our small borough to become part of something stronger, more ambitious and more impactful for our residents. And we will lobby for Thurrock relentlessly, whilst at the same time recognising that whatever we agree to has to work for all of the 1.8 million people that live across the county of Essex and has to work for them for many years to come. And I really can't overstate just how important it is for us to grasp this opportunity, because we've got to be really clear, because the government has been as clear as they can be that their plans will happen. And we can either be in the driving seat as part of the priority programme and be there helping to shape a future that is right for our local residents, or we can sit back and let it happen to us. And I know that local people want a say in the changes that are going to affect them, and I promise everybody here, and more importantly those residents, that they will have that opportunity if the government gives us the green light to move forward in developing a combined authority for Essex and creating new, larger councils across the county. And we will ensure that everyone has a voice and is listened to. And I've got to say that despite the unhelpful speculation we've seen from some ahead of any government decision, there is a great deal that we don't know yet, including which councils will join together to create new, larger authorities. But we do know that larger councils will have more bargaining power, will have greater economies of scale, and will be able to ensure that the fantastic opportunities that we have here are realised in a way that really benefits the people who live here. And while we all know and we all recognise that years of cuts to council funding have eroded our ability to deliver services of the quality that residents deserve, and while we understand that we have some outstanding services here in Thurrock, I believe that we can do even more by working with others. Taking the money we save, for instance, from moving from multi-IT systems across councils to one IT system will release real savings that can be ploughed back into frontline services. And that's one example. There are a plethora of others where those kind of efficiencies can be used for releasing money back into frontline services. And I'm ambitious for our residents, and they deserve better than the failings of the past. And of course, we all understand that there are still huge challenges to overcome, but working in a new way by focusing on communities and people rather than clinging to outdated and old structures will really help us to unlock the very best for our area. And I'm committed to finding a solution that makes sense, has our communities at its heart, and will deliver excellent services for years to come. And we hope to hear from government very soon, and I'm optimistic that the response will be a positive one. And in the meantime, we are having continued positive, constructive conversations with our neighbouring councils, Southend-on-Sea, Essex County Council, and districts within Essex, who we will be working with to shape these plans. And I look forward to working with you around this table, with all members of the council, with our staff, and most importantly, our communities, to create an exciting and positive future for the people of Thurrock. I don't generally take the opportunity to make statements, but I think this is an issue of such importance that it's important that we put where we come from and the principles that will guide us through the next few months, the next few years, and put that very clearly tonight. I move on. Item 6, briefings on policy, budget and other issues. There are none. Item 7, no petitions have been submitted from members of the public. And item 8, there are no questions submitted by non-executive members this evening. Item 9, whilst I'm not aware of any matters referred to Cabinet for consideration by an Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we do have briefing notes received which have been circulated to Cabinet and published online. One is enforcement policy briefing note, which will be dealt with when we consider the item 14. 2, fees and charges briefing note, which will be considered when we get to item 18. And finally, a briefing note received on the draft revenue budget, which is a Cabinet report, which won't be considered this evening, but will be considered at the meeting on the 12th of February. Item 10, delegated decisions taken since the last meeting. A table of those delegated decisions taken since our last meeting has been provided in a separate document in the agenda and is also published online. So I come to the first substantive item of the evening, which is item 11, Shared Life Scheme, and I will invite Councillor Hooper to introduce his report.
Thank you, Leader. I'm asking Cabinet to support the decision to go to tender for the Shared Lives contract. The length of the contract is 5.5 years with 2 years extension. And that would be a kind of year-on-year one, with a total value, if targets are met, of around about £3,920,000 and £250 over the 7.5 years of the contract. The Shared Life Scheme is a scheme where families or individuals share their homes with a person with a disability. I must say, 30 years ago, I was actually a shared lives carer myself, and I know that the joy that brings in sharing your home with people's lives and the positive outcomes that sharing a person with a disability sharing their lives with a family can be absolutely incredible. People tend to be of low to medium need and have a learning disability, autism or mental health. Or need mental health support. The service is for people over the age of 18. The current cost at kind of midpoint, the shared life cost, is £460 per week. So our supported living placements and autism is around about £932.50 a week, and supported living for mental health is about £921.56 a week. That's at the midpoints. So this is a real saving, and I'm really hoping that the provider will be active in recruiting shared life carers, because it would be a benefit not only financially to the council but to the quality of life of people with disabilities. The provider will be expected to recruit, train and support shared life carers. That includes training in safeguarding, help identify the best possible placements and monitor these placements. They'll work closely with people who use services, family members and the social work team. The provider will need to be registered with the CQC, so will be monitored by the Care Quality Commission, and the contract will also be monitored by the council. I'm ready to take any questions.
Mark, thank you. Questions or comments? Sarah?
Thank you, Councillor Hooper, for that introduction. So I'm delighted to support the retender and the expansion of the Shared Life Scheme. I think it's a great programme. It offers vulnerable adults the opportunity to thrive in a warm, family-based environment, and it's also very cost-effective for the council, so it's a win-win situation. I think by investing in this scheme, we're not only enhancing the quality of life for our residents, but also achieving significant financial benefits. My question would be, how confident are you that the extension of the scheme will be successful, and are there any risks involved if the scheme isn't extended?
I think in terms of the length of the contract, it's important the length of the contract is considered because of having some stable support going into those services. And I think that the council, speaking to officers, we were going to closely monitor the targets of growth because we felt the targets of growth were important. Sometimes it's very good for a provider to focus on what they currently have and monitor what they currently have, and they are important things, but there is an expectation that the provider will grow these services and that will be monitored. The contract and the way it's set up, if the contract or the successful person who wins the tender isn't meeting the kind of targets the council says, there is a 1 year no fault end of contract. So there is some flexibility, and that's why I feel fairly confident. And also bearing in mind that the future of the council may be in jeopardy, that is also, I think, a positive thing in relation to the contract we would have with the provider.
Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Leader. Just a comment, really. It is such an important report. Quite often, tender kind of reports come to Cabinet and they seem a bit administrative, but actually this is an example of something that is really, really important, and you obviously have a personal experience which will ensure that this scheme, works well and drives forward and is successful, I am sure. And it is just such an important contract to ensure that our residents are able to live fulfilling lives. So I really welcome this, really welcome your experience and support in this, and really hope it does well. Thanks.
Okay. I've seen nobody else. Can I just say I think this is a wonderful scheme, and I think it's one of those examples of a really, really good service that people don't see. And I know it's not a service that's limited to Thurrock, it's a service that operates in lots of other places, but it's a wonderful example of the human side of a local authority, the human side of the work that we do in Thurrock. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and I'm really pleased that we'll be stepping it up and providing more of these opportunities for people who need it. Mark, do you want to put the recommendations?
So I'm asking Cabinet to support a decision that the Council go to tender for the Shared Lives contract. The proposed start date of the contract will be the 1st of October 2025 until the 31st of March 2031, with an option to extend by 2 years in 1 year increments. If growth targets are met, total during the life of the 7.5 year term of the total contract value will rise to £3,920,250.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Point 2 is approve the delegated award of the contract by the Executive Director for Adult Health in consultation with the portfolio holder.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet.
I'll move on to item 12, Thurrock Plan for Culture, and I'll invite Councillor Maurice Cook to introduce her report.
Thank you. I'm delighted to introduce this report, and for those of you that have read it, I do hope that you really get the impression that it really is an easy read. It is something that I think officers have taken on board, how to make it simple for Thurrock to do business with. So the Thurrock Plan for Culture is a forward-looking initiative, and it's designed to harness the power of culture to create significant positive impacts for our community. The plan aims to activate spaces with creative and cultural activities, celebrate Thurrock's unique heritage and support local creative talent. It's come under key themes which are cultural connections, cultural capacity, cultural capital, looking at a strategic approach of partnership and co-creation, community engagement, investment and support. Looking at the role of Thurrock Council for us to act as just an enabler and a facilitator, coordinating the creative and cultural opportunities and working with our partners to actually release the plan. There is a significant action plan, which is short, medium and long-term actions, which will identify how we can achieve the sustainable, cultural, ambitious future for Thurrock, leveraging existing resources and fostering strong cooperation amongst partners. One of the things that came very clear from previous reports when they've been looked at and criticism that's come for Thurrock is that we really haven't accessed the number of grants that we should have done compared to the rest of the country. So I know that this is a key theme that the team are working with and with our partners to make sure that we are at the table, we are able to take our slice of grants that are coming in to open other doors to really embrace the culture that is in Thurrock. So I do ask Cabinet to support the plan for culture and happy to take questions.
Open up to questions or comments. Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Leader. It was more of just of a comment rather than a question, actually. It was just to say, obviously, I'm delighted to see this come, and obviously as portfolio holder for Children's Services and Education, just really pleased to see there's a specific focus on young people and education, because obviously the curriculum is, for arts has been decimated over the years within schools. So, you know, the opportunities for young people to be able to access the arts is diminishing. So I'm really pleased to see that there's a particular focus on children and young people. Thank you. Thank you, Leader.
I think also as well, it's one of these things that we've got to make sure, and we won't get everything 100% right in this report. I don't want to see this gathering dust. I want to see this as an agile, flexible report that will reflect if there are things that we've missed, are things we need to move the focus to, and it just needs to be agile and to be as creative as we want Thurrock to be.
Councillor Holloway.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for this report. I think it is, you know, shows the passion. A lot has gone into it, so really well done. I think again, many undervalue the importance of being able to access vibrant culture, the impact it makes on our communities, on individuals, and the opportunities not just for residents to enjoy the culture, but also for our young people, for anyone really, to be able to be involved in these kinds of cultural activities. We are only 30 minutes from London, which is, you know, the centre of, you know, largest city, one of the best and largest cities in the world for the enormous amounts of culture. So we should, you know, to have access to that and not be able to kind of grow talent that could feed into both things in Thurrock and London is you know, devastating that we're not doing it. So it's great to see this plan, and it's also great. My question was going to be, you know, what's next after this, but you've just, you know, answered that and said that you don't want it to gather dust and the sky's the limit. And I just hope that you and all of us actually, all councillors, all cabinet, can kind of keep pushing this forward and make sure that culture remains a high priority amongst all the other things that we're delivering.
Thank you. It is so important, and a lot of the time it has been so undervalued. It can make significant difference to people's mental health. Yeah. You know, people's just in opening up their creative minds. You know, every child has something that they are exceptionally good at, and it's just unlocking that sometimes in a very different way. And I think by working with the partnerships we have here, we can work much closer and do that, especially as, you know, there is no money for a lot of the youth groups that used to be there. We have to really focus on what we can do and how we can grow and develop this in Thurrock. So, yeah, much appreciated.
Anybody else? No? I really welcome this report this evening. This council has been too long without a cultural strategy, and it's frankly got in the way. And I really paid tribute to some of those officers, people like Lisa Ricketts, some of our staff at the Thameside Theatre, who have kept the flame of culture going in a time when frankly it was ignored to such an extent that it appeared that we were being run by total Philistines. So I really do welcome this. Val, when you introduced, you spoke about Thurrock for too long not getting its fair share of grants and funding that's available for the arts. And I look at the CPP bid, the Cultural People and Places bid, where eventually arts groups in Thurrock levered in £1 million of Arts Council funding. That took years and 3 attempts. partly because they weren't supported by the council, because there wasn't a cultural strategy that they could fall back on. And hopefully this will start to kind of make it easier for those arts groups we have, including groups that are nationally recognised by the Arts Council for advanced funding, to draw that money down more quickly. It's a disgrace that a third of our residents do not engage with culture at all. And that's something that has to change. And the current START programme is just beginning to get out into those parts of the borough where there isn't any cultural engagement and making it happen. And we need to see that spread all across the borough. And the final thing I'll say is that I can't talk about art and culture and heritage without saying that I am looking forward to us making a decision, a positive decision on the future of the Thameside Theatre very, very soon. With that, I'll invite Councillor Maurice Cook to put the recommendations.
Yes, before I do the recommendations, it would be wrong of me not to say thank you. And I know that I have driven some of the officers absolutely balmy by sending things back and asking things to be slightly rejigged in a different way and trying to make it easy to read and making us easy to do business with. So I'd like to thank them for their patience, and the fact that they're still talking to me is really quite cool. And yes, I think you can start to see some bids opening up. If you see that we've had the museum, we've had a successful bid from the museum, which is, I think, incredible, which has really gone sort of a bit under the radar. But there have been some really successful ones starting to come through. You know, we're doing a lot of work with Coalhouse Fort, and you know, we've got the advisory group together now, and hopefully we can start unlocking some different funding that's really going to get that put back on the map. So I think it's a very exciting time to be part of culture in Thurrock. And, you know, obviously with Thameside, you know, I put fingers, toes and legs and eyes crossed that, you know, we do get the positive result that everyone I think in Thurrock wants, apart from maybe a few. So my recommendations are to approve the Thurrock Plan for Culture.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And 2.2, to approve the action plan as the first phase of further collaboration with our Thurrock cultural stakeholders.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Super, thank you.
Moving on, item 13, restructure of community protection and enforcement services. I'll ask Councillor Holloway to introduce this item.
This proposal introduces a new way of working across the borough within the service areas of community protection and enforcement. I know community safety is high on residents' priorities. This moves away from the current position where the 13 service areas are spread across 2 directorates and at times work in silos with limited interaction. The current model does not allow for ease of information sharing, nor does it allow staff to understand the bigger picture of issues. This proposal sees different areas from across the council being brought together whilst creating a holistic solution-based approach to issues that are being faced by the community and our teams. This will also add resilience to what are sometimes very small teams in times of need. The proposal is a shift in working ethos and will allow the teams to work more collaboratively and under a single strategic direction.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. Open up for questions or comments. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Holloway, for the report. Yes, I'm very pleased to welcome this report. I think it shows a really good way of achieving cost savings by actually bringing these teams together and realising the efficiencies that meet, and also being able to share services and support services that have been operating in isolation, maybe with only 1 or 2 people or a few people. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think, you know, it is an example of how this year we have tried to make the cost savings that we have to make by looking at innovative ways of doing it and keeping those savings and those cuts away from frontline services and away from creating a burden on our most vulnerable residents. So I really welcome this. I think it's a very smart way of doing it, and I'm pleased to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Just a statement, really. I really like the place-based sort of approach that we're going to have, because hopefully it will just save us more in cost and in time of individuals. The only thing that I've been reassured on is that I really don't want any more charging going into the HRA, and we can stay within the budget that's currently sitting within there, which I've been told that's absolutely fine. So I really welcome this report. It's more streamlined, we can get things done better, and hopefully it'd be really good to see what the performance is.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I will invite Councillor Holloway to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. And before just removing the recommendation, I just want to thank the comments. It is a credit to Mike, the team and officers for being able to pull together something like this, bringing together such a wide collaboration of teams, and again with the idea of kind of working more collaboratively. So all credit to them. So I will move the recommendation number 2.1, which is agree the changes being proposed and approve the future development of this area in a phased approach.
Is that agreed? Thank you. We'll move on to item 14, which is the adoption of Thurrock Council's enforcement policy, and I'll remind members that there is a briefing from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that's been circulated for our attention this evening. Councillor Holloway, would you like to introduce your report?
Thank you, Leader. This policy sets out the process required for authorised officers to act promptly, consistently and effectively in response to allegations of unlawful activities committed against the Council. The policy emphasises that all authorised officers with enforcement duties, functions and responsibilities should act with professionalism, fairness, transparency and consistency. The policy allows for specific service areas such as counter-fraud, planning enforcement and parking enforcement to have specific policies for their own area, but it will be guided by this overarching policy. This is standard practice across local authorities due to the very diverse nature of enforcement activity that takes place. This has been shared with the other leads within enforcement through the Internal Enforcement Board with unilateral agreement of its content. All policies will be reviewed upon adoption of this policy to ensure current service area policies adhere to this.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. I really welcome this, and the reason I welcome this, I don't think there is one. And there's too many times I have been asked by our residents over and over again what we can do and what we can't do as councillors in terms of the enforcement of the council policy. And I think this is a really easy read, really understandable, and to be honest, well done, because I really do like it.
Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you again. I really welcome it. I think, it provides a consistent, professional and transparent approach to enforcement activities. Obviously, there are risks involved when enforcement is not consistent. So I'm glad, I think this policy really addresses that, and I hope, obviously, it's the first stage of the policy, and different areas will need to develop their own policies that are relevant to their particular area. But I think it's a really great start, and it's a really good policy which addresses the risks that there are around this area very well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay. Councillor Holloway, would you like to move your recommendations?
Yes, and again, just to add, I'm really delighted to get that positive feedback. I know that officers will as well, because these are not easy documents to write, so to get that feedback is really important. It also demonstrates the quality of officers that we have working within the council now, that they are seeing what is needed to deliver kind of real change, real consistency and a standard and a level that we should be expecting across the council. So it is excellent to be seeing this from our teams. And on that note, I will ask to move 2.1, approve and adopt the Thurrock Council Enforcement Policy.
Are we all agreed? Thank you. We move on to item 15, which is the Local Council Tax Support Scheme, and I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to support the local council tax support scheme, and some may remember that we did actually look to go to a banded scheme, but we've decided to retain the current framework for 2025-26 financial year. So obviously this policy reflects our unwavering commitment to support Thurrock's most vulnerable residents while maintaining fiscal responsibility. We've been through some extensive benchmarking, consultation and modelling to arrive at this decision. So the report itself is pretty simple. We're sticking with the same scheme as before. There aren't any changes. We did look very closely at a banded scheme though to see if it would be better for our residents and possibly as a way to reduce administration costs, in particular around the universal credit scheme. But we decided at the end of quite an extensive modelling, consultation process that we weren't going to do that because there may have been some impacts on some of our most vulnerable residents. So there's still exemptions in there for our military residents and for our disabled residents, so that all stays the same, and I recommend the report and hope that my colleagues will approve the recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Any questions or comments? No? In which case I will invite you to take a deep breath and move your recommendations.
Okay. For the reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to 2.1 note the analysis and review of the current local council tax support scheme for working age people.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
2.2 that Cabinet recommends to Council the approval of the current local council tax support scheme for working age people for 2025-26, which has been in place since 2017-18 with no changes. So to ensure work pays, the first £25 per week of earned income is disregarded when calculating levels of council tax support. The maximum capital limit is to be set at £6,000. This means anyone who has savings over £6,000 may not receive support with their council tax. For working age claimants, the maximum support allowed is set at 75% of their full council tax bill. To assist those with families, the child benefit and child maintenance received is not included as income in the calculation of council tax support. The maximum period a claim can be backdated under the scheme is 1 calendar month. To qualify for this, the claimant will need to provide good reason for not claiming earlier. There is a full disregard of military compensation payments, including war disablement pensions, war widows pension and armed forces compensation scheme payments. Disability living allowance and personal independence payments are fully disregarded. The number of dependents assessed in the calculation of claimants' needs is a maximum of 2, and the maximum period of an award when temporarily absent outside the United Kingdom is 4 weeks.
Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We move on to item 16, which is council tax discounts and premiums. And I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
So, some of you will remember that this went through Council in February 2024. So again, this is sort of a straightforward report. It's explaining that the premium on empty property will continue and the premium on second homes will start on the 1st of the 4th, 25. Just that we had to give a year's notice that we were going to start to do that. So this report basically is bringing that into force.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, Sarah, if you want to move your recommendations.
2.1, note the additional income generated from the long-term empty and unfurnished premium year to date in 2024-25 as detailed in 4.12.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Note the statutory exceptions and exemptions that have now been finalised in regulations and will apply to both premiums from April 2025.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Note the work that has been undertaken in 2024-25 to validate properties that will be potentially subject to the second homes premium from the 1st of April 2025.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Recommend to Council that the Council continues to charge the long-term empty council tax premium in line with the existing determination on properties empty after 12 months and up to 5 years, 100% premium. Properties empty between 5 and 10 years, 200% premium. Properties empty over 10 years, 300% premium.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And 2.5, recommend to Council that as per the existing determination, the Council proceeds to implement the second homes premium from the 1st of April 2025.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on, we come to item number 17, which is the dedicated schools grant for 2025-26, and I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
Thank you. This report provides detail of the funding allocation to be received by Thurrock from the dedicated schools grant in 2025-26. This is information that was released by the Department for Education on the 18th of December 2024 and discussed with the Schools Forum on the 16th of January 2025. It's the local authority responsibility to decide local funding formulae for schools and academies in its area. Local authorities continue to be required to mirror or bring their own formulae closer to the school's national funding formula. Today's decision asks that Thurrock's funding formula will continue to implement the principles consistent with the decision made by Cabinet from 2020-21. That is, that the national funding formula, including area cost adjustment values, will be applied. Where this is unaffordable, the basic entitlement value to be included will be reduced to contain within the funding available, and growth fund to be retained to support sufficiency of school places. Officers have confirmed that the national funding formula and the area cost adjustment have been applied in full for the first time in Thurrock in 2025-26. This makes Thurrock fully compliant with the requirements of the national funding formula. So I believe that we have also got an additional 24.207 million allocated across all the blocks with the new settlements, so that's very welcome. It's we could always do with more, but it's good to have some increased investment, particularly in the high needs blocks, so we can address the rising demand for education, health and care plans that we're seeing at the moment, like most local authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say, obviously, I'm just pleased to see that the DSG has come to Cabinet, and also delighted to see there's been an increase in the funding, in particular around the high needs block, obviously for young people with special educational needs. But obviously, it's not going to touch the sides in terms of the funding required. But I am pleased to see that there has been an increase, and I'm pleased to see the report. So thank you.
Anybody else? No? I would just underscore that comment, really. We all know that the increase in the pressures on SEND, on those high needs pupils up and down the country is getting this to the stage where it's unsustainable. This is, of course, a help, but it's a sticking plaster. And we do need to see a proper, long-term, sustainable resolution to this. It's something that this council and other councils need to turn our minds to. We need to work with colleagues in the LGA and other places to lobby consistently for government to address this before what is already a crisis becomes something that is entirely out of control. Councillor Muldowney, do you wish to put your recommendations, please?
To agree that Thurrock's 2025-26 schools funding formula to be implemented as stated at 1.3 above, this being consistent with previous Cabinet's decisions made since 2020-21.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We come to item 18, fees and charges policy and schedule for 2025-26. And can I remind everybody that we have a briefing note from the Corporate Scrutiny Committee on this item. Councillor Muldowney, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This report presents Thurrock Council's updated fees and charges policy and the schedule for 2025-26. The report shows the schedule. The fees and charges are decided by statute, by external organisations, for example, planning and building control fees. So some of those are outside of our control to set, but there are discretionary fees that can be set by us as a council, for example, car parking charges. So what we're doing this year, in the interest of efficiency, because the work that has to go on behind the scenes to set these fees and charges every year is really not efficient. So this year what we're proposing, we've adopted a slightly different approach to the setting of our discretionary fees. So we are applying what we call as a backstop rate. What that means is that all discretionary fees and charges will be uplifted by the backstop rate. Services do have discretion to deviate from this. For example, if benchmarking data shows we are higher or lower than our comparator group, and any variations are shown in the report. In terms of budget impact, there are 10 specific fees and charges proposals in the 2025-26 proposals, which will contribute 1.6 million. So I was at a corporate overview and scrutiny when they looked at this report, and I do want to thank Scrutiny for their input into the report. There was a good discussion around it, and there was support for the move to the backstop arrangement. So one of the issues that came up actually when we spoke about that agenda item was around the rises in burial fees, and I said that I would go away and talk to officers. I have had discussions with officers about this, because it was felt by some members that this would be quite a heavy burden upon some communities, and obviously poorer residents, to be able to pay for burials. However, officers assure me that they have benchmarked against other authorities, and we've actually come in lower, because we've come in lower than our comparable authorities. And I'm just going to hand over to Paul, please, for the data on the benchmarking, just so we can be clear about how those increase in fees has been arrived at.
Mr. Crick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Muldowney. Yes, so we benchmarked across 10 neighbouring authorities in the South East area. Previously, in 23-24, our fee for Muslim burials was £2,175. The benchmarking data for 24-25 was 2,451, so we were quite a way below benchmarking. So we recommended then that it's set at £2,500 for 25-26, which, when other authorities raise their fees in line with the typical inflation fee, it's going to be pretty much comparable with neighbouring authorities. So that's why we've brought the burial fee for Muslim burials in line with our neighbouring authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Crick. I'll move back to Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. The other issue that was sort of raised quite late in the day, and I did say that I would look into, it was raised with me by Councillor Sisterson, was around the fees for events. Now, these are actually not new fees. Before we had a price on application. So we're talking about events which are held on council land. So there's always been a fee there, but what we've done is we've actually moved it so that it's transparent. So, I mean, and, you know, accountable. So, and it's clear for any group that's applying. However, I must say that when we're talking about community groups who are not making a profit from an event, there will not be a fee for that. So I just wanted to make that clear. I know some other information went out which seemed to suggest that that wasn't the case. For community groups that are having events which will make, you know, substantial amounts of money, will make some money, then there will be still a 50% reduction on the fees for those kind of events, and there's four fees actually for small, medium, large and very large events. So just to make that absolutely clear, for community groups who are, say, I mean, putting on a fair and charging £50 per stall, so that there will be some funds raised from that, they'll still get a 50% reduction on the overall charge. But for community groups who are holding community events that are about social cohesion and they're not really there to make a profit, there won't be a fee for those kind of events. So I hope that that clears up any issues that people have had about that.
Okay, this has been raised a number of times. I think that's very clear. If the primary purpose is, I don't know, the big lunch, picnic in a park, no fee. If the primary purpose is to hold a boot sale, then there would be a fee. Can I ask that officers write to members of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee just to clarify that once and for all, please? Any questions or comments? Councillor Watson.
So thank you for clearing that up, because that's one of my big concerns. So could we also set up a bit more clearly out to our community forums as well, because they're the ones that's been raising this, because they don't understand. And actually, even I read it completely wrong, because in the actual fees and charges itself, it looked like that. Like for community and charity events, it will be 50% subsidised. So if we can sort of like get it more crystal clear of what we actually mean, then that would help tremendously, and also go out to our residents to tell, well, the community forums to tell them that, and other small local charities that work alongside. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, thank you. Councillor Muldowney, do you want to move your recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So 2.1, agree the proposed discretionary fees and charges to be levied by the Council with effect from the 1st of April 2025 as detailed in Appendix 1.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
2.2, to note the statutory fees and charges to be levied by the Council with effect from the 1st of April 2025 as detailed in Appendix 1.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
2.3, to agree the Thurrock Council Fees and Charges Policy 2025 as attached at Appendix 3.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And 2.4, to agree that any changes in fees and charges required during the 2025-26 year are delegated to the Chief Finance Officer, Section 151 Officer, in consultation with the lead member for resources and the relevant portfolio holder.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Come to item 19, which is the National Investigation Service, known as NATIS, contract extension. Can I just remind members that the report does have an exempt appendix, and therefore I would remind everybody here not to discuss the contents of the exempt appendix whilst we are live streaming the meeting. If anybody does wish to discuss the contents of the appendix, we can go into a closed session, at which point we would ask any members of public and press to leave. With that, Councillor Muldowney, would you like to introduce your report?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to welcome this report on the NATIS contract extension, which secures a vital partnership with the Department of Business and Trade for another 3 years, with the option to extend for a further 18 months. This contract is a testament to the exceptional quality of our NATIS service and its critical role in combating fraud and protecting public funds. The revised VAT, we've had some additional information that's come in since the report was written. When we were first advised of the value of the contract, it was assumed that VAT was inclusive of that amount. However, the DBT have since advised us that the value of the contract is actually exclusive of VAT. So that means that we've got 30 million over the first 3 years, exclusive of VAT, and 45 million over the full term with extensions. So this adjustment highlights the financial benefits for Thurrock, ensuring we can fully utilise, we've basically got more money than we thought we were going to get to spend on the service. I want to commend the steps taken to stabilise staffing and mitigate risks during the transition. Certainly not that long ago, NATIS was not within the governance of the local authority system, and there was a report that was commissioned at that point. All of those items, recommendations from that report have been now put right, so they've all been addressed, and there's been various further reports into NATIS which have been favourable, and NATIS continues to deliver very good outcomes. So I'm pleased to recommend this report to Cabinet and hope that you will support it.
Councillor Baldoni, thank you. I think the only thing I would say on this is that the NATIS service is unrecognisable from that of 2, perhaps 3 years ago. There's been an awful lot of work that's gone largely unseen into totally turning that service around, and I think we should commend officers for the work that's gone into that. Any questions or comments? No? In which case, Councillor Baldoni, would you like to move the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendations are to agree the Council submits a tender to the Department of Business and Trade on or before 31st of January 2025 for a contract for the provision of fraud investigation services by the Council through its traded service, the National Investigation Service, NATIS, for 3 years from the 1st of April 2025 and up to 3 extensions of 6 months, subject to agreement of the terms and conditions of the contract. And 2.2, subject to the agreement... Oh, sorry. Let's agree.
Is that agreed?
First.
Thank you.
Sorry, jumped the gun there. So now we've agreed 2.1 to delegate authority to the Executive Director of Corporate Services or his nominees to agree the submitted tender and to then negotiate the terms and conditions of contract in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Resources.
Is that agreed? Agreed. Good. Thank you, everybody. That concludes the business of the meeting, and I now declare the meeting closed at 7:55. Thank you.